Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Today we have a very special session on the topic of enterprise curriculum and how it's going to be affecting Pakistan if it's introduced there. And I have a very distinguished gentleman with me today, Pervez, Amjad Pervez bhai. So I'm just going to straight go to him and then ask him to tell us a little bit about himself first, and then we're going to actually move on to the topic. So, Assalamu alaikum, Pervez bhai. How are you
Walaikum
doing?
salam.
ठीक ठाक है?
I'll be very brief. So I left Pakistan in 1969 when I was about 10 years old. Came to London. My father was actually in the British Army, so the army guys were invited over to rebuild Britain after the war. I very quickly then went into education. I graduated in 1983. So I specialized in business studies and particularly market research. I worked for a financial institution for a year, but I wasn't the kind of person who liked hierarchical stuff and taking orders. So I started my own business with the family in 1983, which very quickly grew to now be one of the biggest independent cash and carries and wholesale distributors, which kind of services hospitality sector, which has a supply management system globally. But I also got involved with a lot of government policy stuff as I was building my business. So I worked for the government on strategy, industrial policy, regeneration. I run schools here, free schools for the government. I'm a non-executive director on the NHS. So I know a little bit about health matters and how the ecosystems of health can improve. But my passion has always been entrepreneurialism, because entrepreneurialism, I believe, is the only way that creates prosperity by empowering people. So a lot of my life over the last 30 years, I've been learning about entrepreneurialism. So I'm a student, so I'm still learning, but I wish to pass that knowledge on to others who are just as passionate as me. Or if they're not, me and you will make sure they're passionate.
All right, great. Um, Before we actually move on to the topic, I mean, why you want to actually do this at this point in time in your life? That you want to give back? Why don't you want to become like huge and just like global and everywhere in the world?
I think what I've done is I was managing the company up till about probably 7 years ago. Uh, but what I learned, like I said, I'm a student of enterprise. If you're in the business, you're not gonna be able to scale it. So I needed to step away, put a management team in, let them do and deliver the vision that we as a family and I as a MD had. And Alhamdulillah, that is now in place, and that business is growing. That allowed me to look at other things, and more importantly, sometimes in life you've got to ask yourself, how much money do you really want? Do you want millions? Do you want billions? Do you want trillions? But why do you want that wealth, right? And if I look at the Asian Muslim community in UK and the challenges that we have, and if we look at Pakistan, where I'm from, and I see myself as an overseas Pakistani, right? If Allah's given you the resources and the ability and the skills, I think sometimes we've got to get away from me, and try to give something back, as you said, but in a constructive way, where I actually don't do things, but I empower with help of people like yourselves and many other to actually, empower people so we can together change the world for better.
And I'm just like very peculiar question on this. Like usually when at this age you want to actually help some system or your people, you actually go towards the philanthropy. That's been historically done. Um, do you think this is not the path for you, and sort of like entrepreneurialism is the path for you? How
Okay.
did you choose that?
Okay. Well, philanthropy to me means giving money, skills, resources. But you see, I as much as I like and admire the people who do charity work, I believe that the charity business relies on people, right, who are always asking for something. Yeah, because I've lived the life of an entrepreneur, I believe philanthropy should be where we actually give people the skills so they actually live their lives, empower themselves, create prosperity for them and the communities around them. For me, that is a far better way of giving, because what you're doing, you're multiplying yourself and your skill sets throughout society, rather than just all the time giving charity. Right? I mean, I'll give you an example. A lot of people, at my age, particularly overseas Pakistanis, they want to go to Pakistan, build hospitals and schools and that kind of stuff. When they get emotional and they want to just go do it. But that is not sustainable, because what we're not doing. What are the needs of the country? Where is the master plan for health? Where's the master plan for education? And where do those people come in and give their piece of the jigsaw so the whole system benefits? So that's what I'm about.
All right. So I think that's a pretty good answer. I'm for that as well. So um, let's move on to our topic. So yes, we decided that this is the path. So now we are going towards the implementation stage. So first question we have to ask ourselves, what sort of a structure we should build in order to actually kind of get there where we want to be. Now, when it comes to the structure, obviously, you're talking about industrial kind of wave. So when you say that we need an industrial enterprise curriculum for it, what do you mean by that?
Okay, I think we need to step back a little bit.
Okay.
Um, any person, any logical person who wants to move from their current position to something better, some people want massive kind of improvement in their lives. Some are satisficers and some are maximizers. Yeah, and the same is true of communities. The same is true of companies, and the same is true of countries. So if you look at Michael Porter's competitive analysis, if you look at how competitiveness comes about, so fundamentally at the heart of that, you need to have a vision, whether it's a personal vision, whether it's a vision for a company, whether it's a vision for a country. You need to have a vision, and that vision absolutely needs to be the core. It's not something that you get consultants in who write it for you because you've got to give it to the bank, and it has no meaning. It has no living, kind of ethos to it. And the next bit comes the mission, which is what is the core of your day-to-day, your yearly kind of planning, 2-year, 3-year planning. And then obviously from that, you get your value system. It could be transparency, it could be accountability, it could be doing more with less. That creates the culture, how you actually deliver that. Now, fundamentally, when you talk about structure, if that isn't in place, right, what's going to happen is that you're going to have a lot of people who are enthusiastic, who are skilled, who will gather around you. But because you haven't got a vision which can be shared, or mission which gives each person their role and responsibility, and then a value system that holds them together, like Islam has value system. So if you're a Muslim, there are do's and don'ts. And if you want to play cricket, there are rules. So you play, right? There are certain formal and there are informal rules. So it's a gentleman's game. You play that and you're playing cricket. So similarly, in the world of entrepreneurialism, if these 4 key structures are not put in place, you're not going to go much. You'll do business and you'll be fine. But in terms of when it comes to multiplication and explanation growth, you're not going to get there. Now, I think at the beginning of this discussion, because we're going to touch on macro government policy, institutional policy, I think me and you need to make it absolutely clear to some people who might be listening, who are government officials, who are civil servants, who are people who are employed in institutions, or people who are passionate about one political party or the other. I don't think me and you here to knock any political party or say what you've done in the. Me and you are here to examine what has happened in a rational way. So let me read out. So in terms of where Pakistan's kind of vision has been for the last 10 years. So I've been doing some kind of basic research. Yeah.
One second, sorry for interruption. Your frame is totally out. I mean, your top head is coming out of the actual frame. So
Okay. Am I
just,
okay?
yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, so rather than actually me giving you analysis, because I'm not a research analyst, I'm not an investigative journalist. So what I've done is I've actually looked at what the journalists who are specialized in this, what their comments have been in the last 10 years. So I mean, I've taken a little quote from Pakistan Observer newspaper, which is dated 6th of July 2017, and under the title Pakistan Industrial Policy, and the author goes to say the current and previous governments of Pakistan failed to implement a robust, now that is the important word, right, industrial policy that would lead to industrialization in Pakistan. That's his view. And then the Daily Times on 18th of March 2017, under the title, Where is Our Industrial Policy? Right? And the author goes to examine the 10-year industrial policy from 2005 to 2015. And his conclusion is that although we had written industrial policies, when it came to actually implementation and execution, really, we haven't done a good job, right? And again, the proviso is me and you are not here to, criticize the governments. We're measuring the results as experts have alluded to that. Now, the Tribune in 25th of September 2017, and it says, case for homegrown industrial policy in Pakistan. And the author goes through this analysis, and I don't want to do that because we really haven't got time. But the gist of his argument is, right, that we've copied the Me Too syndrome. So what we've done, we've probably gone to, say, UK or the West or Germany or America. We've looked at their industrial policy and we tried to copy that. And what his suggestion is that we move to an indigenous,
Correct.
homegrown, right? What we need.
That's
We need to absolutely do our SWOT analysis. What are opportunities? What are the threats? Where we're heading? What are the assets that we've got? So then I've actually looked at, and like I'm sure you've looked at, we've got the Vision 2025, right?
Mhm.
It's a vision it's a beautiful document, massive. I mean, I was involved in renewable energy, so I went to Pakistan. I read that maybe 10 times, right? And I'm somebody who reads these kind of documents with T's and I's crossed and all that kind of stuff. And that has 7 pillars in it, beautiful 7 pillars, which talks about people first, right? Inclusive growth. It talks about good governance in terms of institutions. It talks about security of food, energy, and water. And most importantly, it talks about championing entrepreneurialism, right?
Mhm.
There is, something that's very close to mine and your heart. And it talks about the knowledge economy, i.e. the digital, the fourth revolution that's there. And it talks about connectivity. Now that model, that vision has been in place in 2015. And a
Mhm.
lot of the, like economists, Bloomberg, and various other people, the Moody's, who've actually looked at that, right? So far, yeah, and a lot of people, business people in Pakistan would agree that we've not made substantive progress, right,
Mhm.
towards achieving those goals, right? So I'm sure you're somebody who studies entrepreneurialism, like me, you're a student of entrepreneurialism. 80%, research shows that 80% of the businesses, and these are not, startups, these are not small businesses, these are medium to large businesses, actually have a strategic plan. But you know what? They fail. Only 20% actually implement that and execute it properly. So the ecosystem of enterprise that you were talking about, right? It can't be done. By very nature, the politicians have a 5-year window, Khurram. Yeah, because the elections are due, aren't they? Yeah. So fundamentally, what they do, they have a very short term kind of window where they want results, and they can go to the public and say, look, we've done this, we've done that, give us your votes. Whereas nation building is a 20 to 25-year policy, right? So we need something of an evolutionary process, a system, irrespective of the government that comes in, there are certain red lines that need to be continued. So those are the key things that I think I've picked up, and probably we might need to discuss.
I mean, yeah, what government is doing.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So it comes down to what we can do.
Yeah.
So I mean, in terms of the actual, in fact, actually, let's go back because everything is actually linked to. I know we're going to be actually discussing, and we have already spent about 20 minutes on this, what government is doing. Um, Everything is linked to what new generation is going to be capable of doing it. So, and when you actually talk about 2025, is far, far away. The world is going to be very different.
Absolutely.
People are trying to actually predict it was going to be in 2025, but in my opinion, the way actually things are changing, this whole thing is changing so fast that within a generation, we used to actually say that that happened in my grandfather's generation, that happened in my father's generation. It's no more. I mean, within a generation, you have like three change life cycles, change of technologies. I mean, if I'll give you an example, my dad was worried about my handwriting because I was using actually a ballpoint pen. My older son, I was worried that he's not going to have a good handwriting because he's all the time on the computer because his keyboard skills. And I'm worried about my younger sons that they not going to have a keyboard skills because they are talking to Alexa. So there's within a generation there are two type of changes in technology. So within a generation you have these changes coming in, and I mean next 10 years there's going to be maybe three changes coming in where one, if you are born like 5 years apart from your sibling, then you're probably not going to be on the same wavelength as your older ones would be. And yet we are trying to actually have one policy which is going to drive everything in the next world. So I mean, what when you say robustness and you actually put the focus on that particular word, how can we actually bring that robustness in when we actually devise a policy?
Okay. Fundamentally, let's go back to the four key principles of business, which is vision, mission, values, and culture, right? Within these comes the key thing that you're saying, and almost anybody who knows about entrepreneurialism in the current environment and what's going to happen, never mind 25 years forward, in the next 2 years, in the next 3 years, right? Machine learning, quantum computing, IoT, blockchain technology, that's going to blow, right, people's systems and business models to smithereens if they're not ready for it, right? But you see, sometimes this radical change, people get blown away from it and they get anxious and they want to do so many different things to manage all that. And sometimes you've got to sit back and say to yourself, you know what, we can't manage that. But what we've got to do, we've got to observe the trends. And what the ecosystems of enterprise that I'm talking about does is actually you start right at the beginning, right, of a child when they're born, right? And you change the education system. And that education, when I say education system, I don't mean the nursery, I don't mean the school, although they're the integral part of the system. It actually means how we as parents have to interact with the generation that's coming. It's how our grandparents interact with us because we've got to take them with us. So what I'm arguing for, and this is what the West is now. So the work that I did for the local enterprise network here in UK for the last 4 years was exactly, how do we actually grab hold of this massive disruptiveness that is coming, but, make sure that we're at the forefront of it and we're competitive. And what they've decided to do is to ensure that entrepreneurialism. So that doesn't mean that everybody is going to become a business person, but the way they think, because the workplace is going to change, Khurram. It's no longer going to be where you have huge factories and you're doing that. It's machine learning, it's robotics, it's all that kind of stuff. Where is the human interaction? That is going to, how do we master technology? But that starts at the education level, right? At home, at the primary school, at the colleges, at the university. So let me give you an example, right? Everybody will be thinking, well, that's really about science and technology and engineering. No, it isn't. So if somebody's doing, say, history, right? They're learning history. History is about what humans did in the past in terms of power politics, in terms of what happened, what lessons we learned from. I would say that within the curriculum, what we've got to teach them, how can they convey what they've learned from history and actually disseminate the information globally so they actually create an income revenue, but their point of view of what they've learned is actually shared, right, through the technology platforms that we've got. Now, that is the bit that we haven't got in the developing countries. But Khurram, we're at a absolutely advantageous position. Why? Because if you look at the developed economies, they've actually got, so if you look at the telephone, right, in the West, they've got the cables, they've got the old system. We didn't have, the developing countries didn't have to do that. We went to 3G, we went to 4G, we're going to 5G, and we won't have to invest all that kind of. So we could adopt those technologies and actually go ahead of the curve. But we've got to have some sort of a plan to manage that, and that needs to come from the young people who we're teaching. But that will only come if we teach them entrepreneurialism.
Okay, I'm going to come to that point. I mean, that ahead of the curve thing is very deep, and then we have to actually discuss a lot about it. But before we actually do that, we have a question from Cedric. Can you please explain the term entrepreneurial curriculum, which we are actually discussing, but they want explicitly from us that what exactly we are talking about. What is this term?
So a curriculum is a set of defined pathways and rules, right? Whether you learn them at an MBA, whether you learn them at an undergraduate, or whether you're at school, or whether you're at primary level. So it's no longer that you rote learn. It's a curriculum. The example I gave earlier on about history, yeah, how you can take the lesson of history, whether you're at primary school, teach the children what you've learned, how they then disseminate that information from which they learn, what lessons have they learned, and how they can teach society. That is the entrepreneurial curriculum, which makes them think critically and out of the box. So the first industrial revolution and the second industrial revolution, particularly the first one was about steam and power, the second one was about electricity. What that did, they needed people who were disciplined, who could come out of university and college and do a linear job so when people graduate, my generation, when we graduated, we thought we would have a job for life. But you see, that is not going to be the case. You're going to have to learn on the job almost on a monthly basis. So the curriculum is not curriculum of the old sense. It's the curriculum where your mindset is adapted to life learning. So you'll see, Khurram, a lot of online courses which are now free. Top Ivy League universities which give you online courses, basic courses, right? And a lot of the top companies now, when you go for a job interview, the question they might ask you, what are your life learning ambitions? How do you want to progress? So I think we've got to get the younger generation, although they might be Google savvy, they might be, iPhone savvy or Samsung savvy, but, we've got to put it in context of how we align their skills for them having jobs and and the society have prosperity through their skill sets. And that's the curriculum. That's the entrepreneurial curriculum that we're talking about. It's a very big topic, and it's not just confined to schools, although they've got a part to play with this.
Great. So I hope you got your answer, Cedric. Now, moving on to the actual points we were supposed to actually discuss. Now, when we are actually defining this strategy, that this is what's going to be the curriculum, what's going to be the strategy for next 10 years or 20 years, what are the key factors, I mean, we should keep in mind? And I mean, we're going to be talking about like a lot of things, but this is, since it's going to become a foundation of, the whole structure, it's very important to actually look at it like deeply, very deeply, because
Absolutely.
what is happening right now is everybody is running after like this big data, the AI, the machine learning and everything.
Startups is the sexy thing of today.
I know is the buzzwords are created and everybody's like just okay, fine. If we have like 100,000 people trained on this, then ultimately we're gonna be actually taking over the economy of the world. So it's not gonna happen. I mean, this is by the time you'll actually get there, maybe the world is going to be very different. In fact, I was just reading a code. The technology is not a technology if it was there before you were born. So the major portion of the society is youth right now. So especially when you actually talk about Pakistan, you have like 65% of them. They were not there when I mean this major technology which we are used to is there, and that's the prime reason that their focus right now over there. When I actually look at Pakistani industry, their focus, the car industry is going to be the major industry in the world. That's where the whole innovation is going to be happening in your car scenario, because you spend actually too much time there. But we haven't done any innovation in that regard, that what exactly is going to be happening in the car itself. But what we are good at it is when there are problems, like for instance, the rolling blackout problem, load shedding problem. So we have like a mushroom growth of finding alternative solutions to it. So everybody has got the UPS in their houses, or in other cases, we have actually seen the cable network actually gone in Pakistan, whereas in a private capacity. So government didn't have to do that. In fact, like government has such a problem at hand that this is not regularized because they couldn't actually implement the DTH, whereas other countries have like long ago. So it, with its dynamics in Pakistan, when we actually specifically talking about Pakistan, how this thing would work out, especially when we are talking about ahead of the curve thing.
Okay, right. Absolutely the key question, right? You know, a lot of people can read books and come up with models and stuff like that. And we talked about the industrial policy and the narrative of what the observers have quoted, what I quoted earlier on, right? So what we don't want to do is actually fall into that trap. So let me actually give you an example of what I've learned over the last kind of 20, 30 years, how you go from a model system to practical so it's successful. And you're absolutely right. The problem with the human race is when we see success, right? You know, so Amazon does it and everybody wants to become Amazon, and Alibaba does it and everybody wants to do Alibaba. This Me Too syndrome is very contagious, and that's how you get the bubbles, right? And when the bubbles burst, right, 90% of the people get their fingers burnt and the 10% make the money and go away. So how do we actually get away from that? So fundamentally, when we're talking about Pakistan, we forget in our hurry that we're a developing country. So our number one priority is to actually do some market research. And I'm sure the planning department in Pakistan, right, and the Board of Revenue and various other people who gathered that data have got that, right? And if they haven't, then, that is the number one priority that will, you know, in order for you to move anywhere, you've got to know where you are, right? In terms of industrial mapping, so how do we map every city, every Suba in Pakistan? So in Punjab, in Lahore, in Jhelum, in Gujarat, wherever, right? How do we map the number of companies in different sectors to say to ourselves, right, this is where we stand in food, this is where we stand in, you know, electrical engineering, this is where we stand in chemicals. Now, once we have that data, it's only based on that that you can build your industrial policy. Because, right, and I don't know whether we've got that or not, Khurram, because I've been asking for that data for the last 15 years. You know, a lot of the commercial secretaries who come to UK become very, you know, close friends of mine. There's data that's patchy, but if you have patchy data, then you're going to get patchy kind of industrial policy. So once you have that, so you could pick, say, for example, I did a study with Microsoft for the Leeds City region, right? We picked certain cities and you know, you test market. So you could pick one city, say, for example, Jhelum, that's where I come from. So I have a bit of a bias towards Jhelum, right? So you pick that, you map the industrial existing capacity of that. So how many SMEs have you got? How many, you know, medium-sized companies have you got? How many large companies that you've got?
Amjad bhai is having, I think, internet issue. I think there was a glitch before, so we're just gonna actually wait. Uh, Amjad bhai, I think there was a glitch, so your voice disappeared. Sorry, carry on.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that we first have to obtain the data where we are. Once we know where we are in terms of the number of industries and companies in each cluster, right? Based on that aggregation, we then say, okay, say for example, in the leather industry, we want to grow by say 10% a year, right? With the current companies that we've got, now raising productivity can only be done two ways, Khurram. Number one, you increase the capacity of the existing companies, or you grow or you attract more companies from overseas, or you have more startups. Right? There, you know, the curriculum and the ecosystem, once you know where you want to go and what you currently have and what the roadblocks are, them roadblocks will give you the key objectives, right? For the industry, for the institutions, for the policymakers, for the bankers. So across the West, the biggest problem that we have is a mismatch of skills, right? Currently, we, you know, in the whole of the Western developed economies, right, you know, there's a huge need for medical doctors. You know, they're coming from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Turkey, you name it. Now, are you telling me that they haven't got an education system which couldn't? But it's the alignment wasn't right. So what we need to do is learn from those mismatches, and actually, we will never get it perfect, Khurram. But if we get 70 to 80% right, and you know, a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, this is going to take, you know, 10, 15 years to do. But you know what? If you don't start now, it's going to take you 25, 30 years because the problem's going to get worse and your balance of payment is going to get worse. So let me give you another example. You know, there are our neighbor, India, sends students out, right, who are software engineers, who's now over the last 15, 20 years, most of the tech companies in Silicon Valley are run by CEOs who are our neighbors. But you know, what do we send out? We send out young kids who go in the burning sand in Abu Dhabi and Middle East, right, are building, you know, doing construction work, right? Where's the value added in that? So I think we've got to have a 10, 15-year industrial strategy. And I agree with the chap at Tribune. We've got to have our own policy, and that starts with the data sets, right? And then we can think about quantum mechanics and all this IT stuff that we're talking about, because you know, without that we're not going to win the world. But first we've got to catch up.
Okay, okay. Let me throw a curveball here. Basically, do we even need this like big long-term planning like for 10, 15 years? The point is, the world is going to be very different. The next year, we're going to be putting the kids into, or like asking them to, okay, this is a viable path for you for your career, is going to be different. It's not, the world is going to be very different. So that's my point basically.
Okay,
So
okay. That's a beautiful question, and people
okay.
ask me that question. So let me, the way medicine is delivered, the way accounting is delivered, even the way law is done, machine learning is absolutely going to disrupt that. Yeah, but does that mean that we don't have a beginnings of a curriculum in university to teach people dentistry or medicine or whatever? Right, disruption will happen, but they've got to follow a path of basic skills. So if you want to become a programmer, right, well, you've got to learn code. You've got to learn the ABCs of code. But you see, if industry changes, right, when you've graduated, right, this is the point I made earlier on, Khurram, right? If we create a mindset where people are now saying, I'm going to be adaptable, I'm going to be learning not every 10 years, but almost on a daily basis. So you give them the foundational skills, but then we give them a mindset of adaptable, lifelong learning that will, you can then challenge those and adopt them to make a career and make a country, a great again. So I'm agreeing with you, but I'm saying that we manage it by a linear process, but then an adaptable learning process.
Okay, so just quickly before we actually move on, Vikas is saying Amjad Bhai has got Yorkshire twang. So he's basically, yes, he's from Bradford. So
I've
that's
lived
why,
for nearly 40 years, my friend, so you're going to have to put
uh,
up with
exactly. And the second thing he says, like, if he could talk in Urdu for the benefit of everyone. So,
मैं कोशिश करता हूँ मेरी उर्दू इतनी अच्छी नहीं है
Bilkul. So the reason we were actually doing it was primarily because the discussion was quite academic, and maybe everybody wants to actually hear that in the corridors of power in English. So that's why. And then also, I think Amjad Bhai feel more comfortable in English. But
I think in English. I'm sorry, I can speak Punjabi and Urdu, but I manage it. That's all. But if somebody really wants to have a conversation, they can follow me on my Facebook, and I can give them my details, and we can have a conversation where I can fill them in. I'm accessible, and I'm sure you're accessible, Khurram, as well. But I think right now we're having a conversation which is academic. Yes, you're right, but the language is also, unfortunately or fortunately, when the Muslims were at ascendancy, everything was written in Arabic. Now the Western powers are in ascendancy, so English is the medium. But soon we'll be learning Mandarin, I hope.
yeah, and also, I mean, the the conversation we are having, the topic is basically the some of the terminologies we're going to be actually using is mostly in English. So the only thing we're going to be actually using in Urdu would be verbs. So, so that's pretty much. Sorry, you said that's a sad reality. And then I do most of my session in Urdu, by the way. But I mean, this one probably had to be in English. So anyhow, as Amjad Bhai said, anybody has to any clarification on a particular point, then please, by all means, in comments.
Inbox me, or I'm on Twitter. Get in touch with me. I'm more than happy to explain it to you.
And also, you're saying, I don't get much of what Khurram is on about. I don't know. I think because I'm asking the questions, so maybe you probably are not on the same frequency that um, uh, what I'm trying to actually say. But when you actually get the answer, then Pervez. In fact, I'm just like, are you okay with my questions, or do you fully understand what I'm
No,
saying?
absolutely. Listen, I love questions because the quality of an entrepreneur is that you solve problems, and the harder the questions are, I learn, and I hope the audience and you will learn. So together we'll all learn, right? So I might not know all the answers, but I'm somebody who learns from mistakes and learns from others. I've got a very open mind, inshallah. That's not an issue.
Okay, so my point was where we actually left was that, and you briefly mentioned that obviously it's not going to be, you know, written in stone that we won't be able to actually change it. That's going to be dynamic. It's going to be robust. Then we can make certain adjustments to it. So, but what I see is we don't have that. That kind of flexibility is not built into the actual planning of that curriculum or the strategy. The reason is that when they actually look at it, and initially when they had the vision of 2010 and then now 2025, there isn't already inbuilt parameters that yes, we can adjust that here next year, we can adjust that here next year, and then ultimately it is going to become where we want to be. Because what happens right now is they have like this thick document, which is called 2025 vision document, and it's written on paper. It's not written in Google Docs where anybody can actually go and change it. That okay, we are now in 2018, so the dynamics of the market has totally changed. So I think we should make certain adjustments to it. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I mean, I get that, Khurram. But you see, there is and I've been going to Pakistan quite a lot because I'm a trader. I have companies that trade with Pakistan and have been for the last 20 years. And there is one thing, I could be wrong. So if I'm wrong, I stand corrected. There's a culture of over dependence and over expectation from the politicians. You know, we believe, somebody's going to come on a white horse in a shimmering, armor, and they're going to sort everything for us. In the fourth industrial revolution and in the current environment where we are, the key to success, right, of the future is entrepreneurialism. But people are going to argue that we are entrepreneurial. You said that, when there's blackouts, we've got this. And I believe the Pakistani nation, right, but the human capital of Pakistan is so disruptive and innovative because of the circumstances they face. But you see, the challenge for us, the entrepreneurs, is how do you funnel that talent and creativity, right, to align it with industrial strategy that have streams what you talk about of flexibility. So you know what I would say, let the politicians do what they do because it's their job to create these plans, right? But what we should do for an entrepreneur, right, that is an opportunity where they're not doing things good, right? If a system is bust, right, we need to step in. And I think the entrepreneurs, and I'm part of I'm glad to say I've actually created an organization in Pakistan called JIESDP. It's a long word, which is a joint initiative, right, for social and economic development of Pakistan. Now, we have like-minded private sector people in that organization who are connected. Imagine, Khurram, that we've got over 6 million Pakistanis across the globe. And those Pakistanis, right, have a history. They're now into the third and fourth generation. So the third and fourth generation are born and bred people in UK, in America, in Saudi Arabia, in Malaysia, in Turkey, right? They're embedded into the system. And the businesses, the diversity of businesses they're involved in is absolutely massive, right? Now, those are low-hanging fruits. When we talked about creating a database of where each industry is in each city and what they need to grow, in order to get new customers in overseas market, you were talking about it in your other seminar, about how difficult it is and the mindset that you need to change and the quality parameters that you've got to change and the legal stuff that you've got to go through in terms of creating agencies, right? Imagine that you've got somebody like me, right, sat in UK, who understands the market, who understands the economy, who understands the networking, right, who understands the quality parameters, and who also has a preference to deal with Pakistan because of my allegiance to it. Where is the linkage? Forget the technology for a bit now. Absolutely forget the technology. Where is the plumbing? Where is that, thought process, right, of our, Department of Commerce, Department of Planning, which says, through NADRA, we must have right, the database of Pakistanis overseas, because when I come to Pakistan, they've got the database.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we connect those businesses at different stages? So, there are those people who've got startups in UK and America. There are those people in Pakistan who've got startups in the same clusters. How do we? And it's now, Khurram, with technology, it's so easy to connect them up.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But what we need, so this thing that me and you were talking about, part of the ecosystem is the growth hub. Right? The growth hub is like a toolkit. Right? So for education, for schools and universities and colleges, right, it has different toolkits of experience. So if they want something on something, they go to the growth hub, right, where they pass that expertise. It could be mentoring, it could be people retired like me in certain sectors who help them and guide them. It could be technologists who say, look, this is where the technology is going. This is what you need to adopt in order to be disruptive and engaging in that market. Right, but that is something that within a year or two, Khurram, right, if the right people did it and if the right education was there, right, never mind that we will become the 10th largest economy in 2047, right? I am absolutely convinced. I'm absolutely convinced, and as a businessman, this is not aspirational. This is a reality that I think that we can achieve. Right? I think within the next 10 years, right, we can achieve that if we get just that bit of the policy right, right, and then from there we can, launch part on everything else.
But I'm just wait, don't you think? I mean, that fine connectivity will come, and then finally we actually. I think I actually see that. I mean, a lot more people from diaspora are actually traveling back to Pakistan, including myself. I mean, I'm spending a lot more time in Pakistan every year. I mean, the last year I think I spent like about altogether I think about 3.5 months, which was literally 3 weeks just a couple of years ago. So, I mean, a lot more people are actually traveling and spending more time there and then looking at the opportunities and everything. And that would gradually grow, inshallah.
No, but
Um,
imagine, Khurram, imagine that as a technologist who's globally connected, right, the planners in Pakistan say, right, Khurram, you've got this global connectivity, you've got these concepts, you've got people like me who are working with you across the globe, right? This is the bit that we think, right, you can do in order to create the bigger canvas
mhm.
of Pakistan's industrial policy. And here's your role and role and responsibility, and here are the resources. That those resources don't just have to be money, right? Sometimes you don't just need money to get things done, right? There are a lot of other things that you need for businesses to actually grow and prosper. It's rule of law, it's security, it's guarantee of children's education, right? All that kind of stuff, right? But you're doing that because you can see the opportunity in Pakistan, right? But just imagine if that was knitted together, right? And you were part of the fabric of that policy making, policy delivery, and policy evaluation. That's the bit that's not happening. There are a lot of people that I know, right, across the globe who are Pakistanis who are going and setting up, schools and they're setting up hospitals. Now, why can't they be part of the bigger industrial policy? So if somebody wants to set up say a clinic, right, in Jhelum or Sialkot, right, they haven't even done the mapping exercise of the needs of that city. And they just go open up, right? It could be cancer, it could be diabetes, but you know what they do? They go and do some sort of other thing. So this linking the need of the country or the city or the village or the area with the people that are abroad and the businesses, right? That is exactly what the government should be doing, right? It shouldn't be actually doing the stuff. It should be an organizer and actually planning and delivering, enabling people to fit into the cluster policies that they have.
So, I mean, when we talk about like your hub, fine, this comes together, everything comes together. Let's say we are there because we are in the last 10 minutes of the actual session. So I just
That
want
flew very quickly then.
so I just want to get somewhere. Although we're gonna have like many more sessions, inshallah, on this particular topic, but especially when we actually wrap up this session, I think we should get somewhere. So, in order to again going back to the point that in order to actually have this, all 360 degrees coming together, and we are merging, and this is like a hub where we have diaspora coming in, local education system is actually feeding in, government is like rightly putting everything into right direction and everything, and even putting this robustness in it, like every year, like we have some sort of like adjustments to it, like we normally do on a yearly budget thing. So budget resources are allocated every year depending on where needs. So every year, that's why we have the budget. So once we have that, I mean, are we on the right track, or like, I mean, there could be a possibility that that wasn't the right thing we should have done, and let it grow like organically, and then haphazardly or in a chaos, and then we'll find a pattern in the chaos.
No, no,
I mean,
no, no, no. But look, enterprise is about taking a risk, right? And you will make mistakes, and you will know statistics, right, better than me. In the first 3 years of most businesses, 80% of those businesses fail. But you know what? There are ways that you can turn that round. Yeah, you know, and I know in terms of how we engage, the models that you put, how you test the market now with the new technology and all that kind of stuff. So from a 80% failure, you could actually go to 80% success. Now that is phenomenal. But you see, those things are being done. And what I'm saying to you is that the wins that we get have got to be really big wins. So even if you go to the Tech Valley, not many companies become unicorns. Maybe 1% of the 99 that started become the unicorn, the billion dollar companies. The rest of them, die. Maybe 20% survive, right, and have a living. So I'm afraid I can't give you that comfort, or the listeners the comfort, right, that there's no risk in this. But you know what? It's what they say. If you don't try it, and if you don't risk it, then you're not an entrepreneur. Then don't bother. You mitigate your risk with the new technology and real-time data. That's what management information systems are all about. So whether you're in health, whether you're in education, right, these alignment of big data will give you a better probability of actually
but
succeeding.
my point was, okay, fine. I mean, obviously, there's going to be always risk, and that's what the entrepreneurship is all about. My point is that we have set rules in the valley, in the west, like these all these ecosystems has got like set rules that, okay, fine, you launch something, you get to the next stage, then you have a next round, and then you actually build a huge thing, whatever. Like it takes, sometimes it takes like 3 years, sometimes it takes 30 years.
Yeah, yeah.
What I'm saying here is that we don't have to do the exact same thing. That's
No,
what
no.
the curve. So, I mean, obviously, we have like a barren land. We can build whatever we want on it, and that's what the biggest advantage we have. So we don't have to actually follow the same path, which is going to take us the same amount of time what it took West to do it. So what we have to do is to actually minimize that risk while we are actually building that strategy. That, okay, let's say if there's a risky element to actually have a startup in Silicon Valley, that out of 100 there are only one, or out of 1,000 only one become the unicorn. Maybe in our 1,000 is going to be 2 or 3 unicorns when we actually build the strategy. That's my point. So
So I totally agree with you, and I go back to what I said earlier on, and I'm agreeing with the correspondent from the Tribune, which is we learn how people across the globe are doing things. Yeah, that's benchmarking. If you don't do it, that's silly, right? You learn from the best, but your look should be global, but your actions should be local, right? Where are you? So when we talked earlier about where are we in terms of a particular city, what is its competitive advantage, right? Where are its strengths? Where are its weaknesses? Where are the threats? And where are the opportunities? You see, Khurram, you must agree, if we don't do those kind of analysis, real analysis in terms of where we are, then we can't actually put the strategy in terms of where we need to go, have the strategic priorities, and from the strategic priorities, you're going to have the scoreboard stuff, and then the individual scoreboards. We all know that, but it all starts with understanding where the local needs are. So if you look at retailing, it's not where the West is. Yeah. If you look at your infrastructure in terms of manufacturing, have we got the right quality parameters? Do our manufacturers actually understand the channels that we need to adopt in order to get to the product? See, I mean, Ramzan Sharif is coming, right? And it's been particularly cold this winter, right? And watermelons from Spain have not arrived, yeah? But guess what, Khurram? The Brazilians have managed to actually get the watermelons to UK because they know Ramzan is coming,
Mm.
right? Guess what? We've got watermelons in Pakistan, yeah? You know, but we're only focused on kinnu, mangoes, right, and wheat, right? But what about the cash crops? What about the medicinal crops, right? What about cashew nuts? What about cinnamon? What about, you know, all those kind of stuff? So I'm not just talking about technology, I'm talking about a mind shift to see where the global demand is. And with the assets that we have got, i.e., fertile land, you know, when the five rivers flow down the spine of the country, that is fertile land. We've got the water. What we've got to do is adopt the blockchain technology, you know, adopt the agri-tech, right, where individual plants can be seen, right? So water scarcity is used properly through using drones which tell you, look, you know, in a certain field, certain percentage of the water content is fine, but you've got, you know, use drip irrigation and stuff like that. So it's not just technology of your phone, right, or, you know, blockchain technology to do, you know, web kind of stuff. It is technology that is adapted to everyday stuff, right? But that becomes the modern fourth generation industrial revolution, right? And that's where Pakistan needs to be. But it needs to start somewhere, knowing where we are, and then build up it. And that's where the private sector comes in, and that's where the overseas Pakistanis come in. Unless and until you give me a policy which is robust, do you think you know that we're going to come over, right? You know, we'll come over if the opportunity is there. But as Pakistanis, I think we're looking a little bit more towards the institutions to say, look, we've done the homework. Here's the data sets. We haven't even got that for them.
I know, I understand that, but I mean, I think there is a hope. I'll just give you an example.
I'm very hopeful. Listen, please don't think I'm negative.
No, no, no,
As
no,
a
no,
non
no, no. I mean, the point of having this conversation is to actually bring out those points so we can actually correct them. So I'm
I'm
not.
selling my house and going to Pakistan, my friend.
I
So
know, I know. We are working on this. So I mean, by no means, like obviously, there's when we actually use the word hope, this also has a like a positive and negative connotation because when we actually use that word, it means that okay, that we are talking about something very bad right now. So there's a hope to actually correct it. Whereas not everything is bad. I mean, I think we are taking it as an opportunity.
yeah.
So just to give you an example, one of the startups recently is called Shazday. Um, in northern area, and since we were talking about the agri tech, and we are in the last minute or two, so they were actually what they did because in northern area all the apricot trees are pretty much scattered all over the place. So there's no one place where you would have like as a farm they don't have those trees. So what they did was they actually mapped every single tree. Uh, and when I say every single tree, it's like it's a small vicinity. So they have like about 1,000 trees, which are geotagged.
Okay.
Imagine that it is starting from this point onwards. So every single year from this point onwards, they're going to be adding like another 1,000 trees, and then slowly, I think they have a plan in about 5 years to actually geotag pretty much every single tree. And then every year they would have exact number of apricots actually getting harvested from that particular tree. So imagine that how much data you're going to be actually accumulating.
But
So,
You're talking my language now. Look
yeah,
where they started. They actually started by having the data of what they currently have. Yeah?
sure.
Right? And then they added right stuff to it. So what I'm saying, this is exactly the methodology that you could use for leather, you could use for transportation, for everything. Where are the companies? How many are there? What size are there? Where do they need to grow in order for us to hit the targets that we want to hit as a macroeconomy level? right? So I think, it's not difficult. I think the will is there. I think that we've arrived with the CPEC enthusiasm that we've got. And, Chinese are really good friends of ours, but, Chinese have their own self-interest. And, we've got to have our own self-interest, which is that we want a prosperous economy, we want a prosperous nation. And let me remind the people who are viewing this, it is the Pakistani entrepreneurs and Pakistani people the responsibility to make sure that we compete in the best of the world, right? And unless and until we take a systematic approach to this, other people will come and use our ingredients, use our natural resources, use our human capital to improve their countries, and we will be lagged behind. Inshallah, that won't happen, but that is the flip side if we don't do it properly.
All right, thanks, Amjad bhai. It was a great session, and I think we we were able to only actually discuss one point out of our agenda during all this time. So I think we have to actually come back and maybe do a couple more sessions.
Yeah, but I think, Khurram, what we forgot to say, when you were here, kindly, you were as my guest in Bradford. I think it is important in this ecosystem of enterprise that the people who risk to startups, yeah, it is our duty, people like yourself and people like me and the government institution like the chambers and various other people, to ensure that the global 80% failure is turned into 80% success rate. And I think we can do it. And me and you have obviously shared the information, right? How that can be done. It's a stepwise course. It's not a course. It's a journey, right? Because a startup has different problems. A mature company has different issues, right? So I think we probably might need to do something on that later on. If people are up for it, and we can do that.
I think maybe next week or the week after, inshallah, we'll look into doing more sessions, inshallah, just to cover those points.
And people were asking, a lot of people that I know, because I've tweeted and put it on my website, they're saying, look, we're busy. Have you got a link that I can replay this for people, or?
Yeah, basically it's going to be on website. Sorry, on Facebook. So you have already tagged on that one. So you should get a notification that on your wall you should be able to actually see it and then share it.
Is that on your website?
No. It's going to be on the Facebook. So you are tagged on that Facebook.
Okay, no worries. Thank you.
No worries. Also, it's going to be available on JumpStart website and JumpStart YouTube channel also. So I'll share the link with you anyway.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
You should be able to actually get the notification. So
good luck with everything that you're doing. And if there's anything that we can do here in UK, we're at your disposal and disposal of Pakistan.
More on that point, and obviously, I mean, you're a great support. Any final words before we wrap up?
I would say to the youngsters who are listening, particularly the university students, I had the honor of actually addressing the young people of the National Defence University the other day, and they've kindly sent me some of their business plans. Be bold, be imaginative, don't be afraid. The superpowers of Russia, America, look at Malaysia, what they've done. Look at Turkey, what Indonesia have done, right? Be confident, but be methodical and understand the journey is not going to be difficult. But there are a lot of Pakistanis in Pakistan and across the globe who are there to help you and guide you. And inshallah, we'll learn together and make Pakistan one of the greatest nations on planet Earth.
Inshallah. Thank you, Amjad bhai, for your time and such a great conversation, and then such a great final message. So it all summed it very well. So thank you very much, Jazakallah, for taking our time. Thank you.
Allah Hafiz.
So guys, that was the session, and although it was like very academic and we were talking on a very different frequency, I don't know how many of you actually were able to grasp what we were discussing, but this is the very foundation on which the entrepreneurialism is going to be built up, how the entrepreneurship building or the levels is going to be actually going up in Pakistan. So that was really important. That the main structure, the foundation, or I wouldn't call it an ecosystem, but this foundation itself, it has to be very strong, and it has to have like this capability to take the future robustness and changing elements. So it could take the pressures from those changing elements, and it's not just a static foundation, which would ultimately just be for just few story buildings, whereas we need many story buildings on this particular foundation. So thank you very much for tuning in, and I'm going to be actually coming back with another session. It's not been decided yet, but it's going to be in a couple of days. So inshallah, keep watching. Thank you very much. Until then, मेरी तरफ से Allah Hafiz. Assalamu alaikum.